Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. In this video, we are going to focus on multiplication and division of positive and negative numbers, variables, and terms. This tutorial covers 4 major sections. 1 is the fundamental concepts of multiplication and division of signs. 2 is the acronym that we can use to remember these important concepts. 3 is a list of 12 questions to illustrate the application of these concepts. And lastly, is a summary of these fundamental concepts. Why do we have to learn these concepts? They are going to help us in solving equations, simplifying expressions, and application in other numerous mathematical operations in different areas of maths. To be able to understand this concept, we need to ask ourselves 2 major questions. The first question is, are we multiplying signs of the same kind, or we are multiplying signs of different kinds? The second question is, are we dividing signs of the same kind, or we are dividing signs of different kinds? To be able to get this concept and apply it, we need to look at the fundamental concepts of multiplication and division of signs. And we talk about signs here, we are referring to positive and negative sign. Let us consider these different instances. So in the first instance, we have a positive times a positive. It's going to give us a solution of positive. Negative times negative will be equal to a positive sign. When you have a positive times a negative, you're going to get a product of a negative sign. And a negative multiplied by a positive is going to give us a negative sign. And as we can see here, there is an interesting pattern formed that whenever you are multiplying signs of the same kind, whether it's positive, positive, or negative, negative, they are going to give you a product of a positive sign. So we can use kind of short form to be able to remind ourselves. So we can say when you have same sign, you'd always get a positive product of your signs. And if you have different signs and you're multiplying them, different signs, then you're going to get your product as a negative sign. We can even use shorter way of reminding ourselves by taking each first letter of these 2 words. In this case, you can say S for same, S for sign, then you'll always get a positive. So same sign multiplied will give you a positive product. And when you have D for different signs, S for sign, when you multiply them, they always give you a negative sign. So you can say ds equals a negative sign. It's going to be a very essential concept that you can use to remind yourself. Now, there's something else that we need to note here about this section here. As you can see, regardless of what sign starts, you still get the same product. What is being applied here is called commutative law. And commutative law, it's a very important concept in math that tells us that regardless of how you arrange either your numbers, your signs, or maybe even terms of variables, as long as you're multiplying them, you still get the same product. I'll use an example for that. For instance, let us say I have 2, I'm multiplying by 4. I'll get an 8. Whatever I decide to start with a 4, then I multiply by 2, I'm going to still get an 8. So you can see, regardless of how we are arranging them, as long as we are multiplying them, we get the same product. And it's the same concept that is being applied in this section here, that if I say positive times a negative, it's going to give me a negative. But if I decide to start with a negative, then I multiply the positive, I'm still getting the same product. So that's called commutative law when it comes to maths. The next concept you're going to look into is division of the same signs, that is positive and negative sign. In this case, we have a positive, we are dividing with a positive. The answer will be a positive sign. Then a negative, we divide by a negative, we are going to get a solution of a positive sign. When you have a positive, we are dividing by a negative, we are going to get a solution of a negative sign. And if you have a negative, you are dividing with a positive, the solution will be a negative. So just like we saw in product, when we multiply these signs, for division, we still get the same answers. So you can simply say that when you have the same sign, you always get a positive when you divide them. And if you have different signs, you always get a negative when you divide them. Now we are going to find these applications in different sections of maths, and I've prepared 12 simple examples that can help us to understand this skill. So let's go to these examples and we discuss each at a time. So I'll have the first example, and we have -4 multiplied by a -6. Whenever you're working out in whatever operations, as long as there is division or multiplications and there is positive and negative numbers, the first thing I will advise is always multiply the signs. And if there's division, also remember to divide the signs before you go to either the term or the variable or the constants you're dealing with. So in this case, -4, -6, they both have negative signs and you're multiplying them. They're just saying you multiply the signs first. So when you get a negative times a negative, is going to give you a positive sign there. Then 4 times 6 is going to give us 24. Normally in mathematics, when you have a positive number, we usually don't write this positive number, so our final answer becomes 24. Going to example 2, we have 7, that is +7, plus into bracket -3p, cross the bracket, is equals to -20. For this case, we are supposed to solve. So we are finding for the value of p. There is a mathematical concept that is also applied here, and we are told that whenever you have a bracket and you have a positive sign or a negative sign between the sign, that is a positive or the negative, and the bracket, there is always a 1. And that is what you're going to use to open this bracket. Again, we need to remind ourselves about the order of operation, because we have more than one sign and we have a bracket. Therefore, we need to apply the BODMAS. So the BODMAS tells us that when you have a bracket, do the operation of the bracket first, then you go to others. Others consist of off, and off in maths means multiplication. And also we have indices inside of it. Indices is the power. Then we check on division, then multiplication, addition, and then the last one should be subtraction as their order of operation. So in this case, since I have a bracket, I'll start working out with the bracket first. So there's a region I need to expand first. For that case, I just drop a 7, then I work out the bracket. So when I have a positive, I open it with a negative. For bracket, we normally multiply, and therefore positive times a negative will give me a negative. Then 1 times 3p is going to be equal to a 3p, which is going to be equal to -20. For this case, I need to put the like terms together. On this side of the left, I will be left with -3p must be equal to -20. When I cross over with the +7 on the other side, it becomes a -7. That's a mathematical concept. We say when a number or a term or a variable crosses over an equal sign, the sign changes. So continue with this working out. We're going to have -3p must be equal to -20 minus 7 is going to give us -27. To get p, I need to divide by the coefficient of p. The coefficient of p here is -3, so I need to divide both sides by -3. And that's going to give us negative divided by negative will be a plus. And therefore, I can simplify by 3, 1 by 3, 1. So to the left, I'm going to be left with a p, which must be equal to a negative divided by negative becomes a positive. Then by 3, 1. And this by 3 is going to give us a 9. And therefore, p must be equal to 9 as our solution to our example 2. Example 3, we have 3 minus 2 into bracket times 10, which is going to give us a given solution. To know that solution, I need to first of all check on my BODMAS. And my BODMAS tells me start with the bracket, which means I'll start by that section there. Now in this case, I want you to pay attention. Between the sign negative and the bracket, there is a 2, which means that the 2 is one that is going to open this bracket. And as we write 10, 10 is positive. It's positive. It's only that we don't write that positive. And therefore, in this case, we are opening a bracket negative 2 with a positive 10. To do that, working out the bracket first, I'll have to drop 3. Then this negative times this positive is going to give me a negative sign. Then 2 times 10 is going to give us a 20. Then 3 minus 20 is going to give us a negative 17 as our solution to that example 3. Moving on to example 4, we have 100k plus minus 50k. Normally, when you see the signs together, that is a positive sign with a negative sign, or a negative sign with a positive sign, or a negative sign with a negative sign, or a positive sign with a positive sign together, and there is no variable, there is no constant, there is no term between them, it simply tells you multiply those two signs. So get the product of those two signs. In this case, we are going to multiply these signs first, and you're going to have to the left as 100k plus times negative is going to give us a negative, then minus 50k. And the final solution there is going to be 100k minus 50k is going to give us 50k. In example 5, we have negative 30 divided by a positive 2. So there's a positive here, is only that is not written. So you have negative 30 divided by positive 2. Let's work out the signs first. So you have a negative, we are dividing the positive, obviously is going to give us a negative. Then 30 divided by 2 is going to give you 15. So negative 15 is our solution to example 5. Moving on to example 6, we have negative 200. There is a positive here. It's only that you don't write it. And we are told to simplify. So in this case, work out with the signs first. So a negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative. Then we can simplify the constants by 4, by 450. So the final answer there will be equal to negative 50. In example 7, we have negative 70 divided by positive 10, then you multiply by negative 4. So there is a positive sign there. So in this case, we have negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative. Then 70 divided by 10, just need to cancel those two zeros, and therefore you are left with a 7. Then you have to multiply by negative 4. And the reasons why we started with the division first before multiplication, we are still applying the concept of body mass. So we do division first before multiplication. That's why we did this section first, then we drop this here so that we can continue with our calculations. Now we have negative 7 multiplied by negative 4. And therefore, we're going to get negative times negative is going to be a positive. Then 7 times 4 is going to be 28. Since we don't write the positive sign in front of a number, we drop it, and therefore our solution there is going to be 28. In example 8, there are 2 approaches you can answer this question with. So I'm going to talk about the 2 approaches, and then you can choose the one that you feel suits you the best. So method 1, or the first approach, will be you work out the numerator first. The answer you get, you divide by the denominator. So working out the numerator, you're going to have negative times negative, and remember here 3 has a positive, so you're going to have a negative times negative gives me a positive times positive gives me a positive. So the numerator will be positive product. 4 times 7 is going to be 28. 28 times 3 is going to give us 84. So you're going to have 84. We are dividing by negative 12. Here, first of all, divide signs. We have positive divided by negative, and that is going to be equal to a negative sign. Then by 12, 1 by 12 is going to be equal to 7. So the final answer there is going to be negative 7. Method 2, we are going to use cancellation method to try and find the way you can simplify your expression to work it in a better and precise way. So we have negative 4, you're multiplying by negative 7, you're multiplying by a 3, and you're saying it has a positive sign there. You divide by negative 12. We can start by simplifying the signs. Since these are multiplication and these are multiplication, we can simplify what is common in numerator and what is common in denominator. So I can start by simplifying this. Negative divided by negative becomes a positive. Then 4, 1, 4, 3. Then you can say by 3, 1, by 3, 1. Since the numerator and the denominator, they have no other common factor other than 1, then you just need to find the product of the numerator divided by the product of the denominator. For the numerator, you have positive 1 times negative 7 times positive 1. As you can see, positive times negative positive is going to give us a negative. Then 1 times 7 times 1 is going to be a 7. Later you have 1. Mathematically, when you have a denominator of 1, there's no need of writing it, and therefore the final solution will be equal to negative 7. In example 9 and 10, we are using indices. Indices is a power. And when you talk about these indices, it just tells you how many times the number should multiply by itself. So if it's a 2, the number should multiply by itself twice. If it's a 3, the number is going to multiply by itself 3 times. So in this case, we have negative 3 into bracket squared. And this bracket is very essential in this question because it tells us that even the negative is multiplying itself. So in this case, we are going to have negative 3 times negative 3. Starting with the negatives first, negative times negative is going to give us a positive. Then 3 times 3 is going to give us a 9. And therefore, the solution there is going to be a positive 9. For the case of negative 3 cubed, it simply means negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Start by multiplying the negatives first. So negative times negative gives us a positive. Positive times negative, it gives us a negative. Then 3 times 3 gives us a 9. 9 times 3 is going to give us 27. So that is going to be the solution to that. Example 10, we have negative 2 to the power of 4. This is going to be the same as negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Start with the signs as usual. Negative times negative gives us a positive. A positive times negative gives us a negative. And negative times negative is going to give us a positive. Then you can multiply the constants. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is going to be 16. And therefore, the final answer there is going to be equal to 16. The other example, we have negative 2 to the power of 5. This simply means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. That is negative 2 multiplying by itself 5 times. Start with the signs first. Negative times negative gives us a positive. Times this negative gives us a negative. Times this one gives us a positive. Times this one becomes the final product as a negative. Then we multiply the constants. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 times 2 is going to be 32. Now, there's an interesting pattern forming here that whenever you have a negative number inside the bracket and you're raising it to the power that is an even number, then the final answer is always going to be a positive product. And if you have a negative number, you are raising it to the power that is of an odd number, like in this case it's 3 and 5, the final answer you're getting, they're always giving you a negative product. That's a very important concept in maths. But I want you to pay attention to this. There is a difference between negative 3 squared and negative 3 squared. For the first case here, it simply means that both the negative and the 3, the power is distributed to both. That's why we are saying it's negative 3 times negative 3, which means that the negative must multiply itself again to get a positive. So in this case, the solution will be a 9. But in the second instance here, you find that negative 3 and it's not inside the bracket, the power is only for 3. This simply means then it is a negative, you are going to multiply by 3 squared, which is going to be a 9. So this is another very tricky part that you need to note the difference between the two, so that you don't find yourself in a trap where you think this is equals to that. In example 11 and 12, it involves expanding the brackets. And to expand the bracket, you're supposed to apply the law of distribution, which states that the element inside the bracket must multiply the element outside the bracket each at a time, and we must pay attention to multiplication of signs. So in this case, we are going to open the entire of this bracket using a -5. And you need to remember that this 4m, it has a positive sign there. So as you open the bracket, you need to first of all multiply the negative and this positive to get a negative. Then 5 times 4m is going to give us 20m. Then this negative times this negative is going to give us a positive. Then 5 times 3x is going to give us 15x. Then this negative times this positive will give us a negative. Then you have 5 times 5y is going to give us 25y. Then this negative times this negative is going to give us a positive. Then 5 times 3 is going to give us a 15. Then we need to check if they are like terms so that we can simplify our expression. For this case, we don't have any like terms, and therefore this is our simplified form of that expansion. For example 12, we have 2 brackets, and to expand this bracket, we have 2 options. One, we can decide the elements of the first bracket to open the entire of the second bracket, or we can decide the elements of the second bracket to open the entire of the first bracket. For this instance, I'm going to use the elements of the first bracket to open the entire of the second bracket. So we're going to have 3x, we multiply by the entire of the second bracket. Then you take the second element with its sign, which is -1/2. We open the entire of the second bracket. But you need to remember here that 3x is positive, 10x is positive, and also this 10x is positive. So as you open the bracket, you need to first of all multiply this positive with this positive to get a positive. Then 3x times 10x, we need to multiply the coefficients first. So 3 times 10 is going to give us a 30. Then x times x is going to be x squared. Then you have to take this positive, we multiply by this negative to get a negative. Then 3x times 8 is going to give us 24x. Then we take this negative times this positive to give us a negative. Then 1/2 times 10x is going to give us 5x. Then you have to take this negative times this negative to get a positive. Then 1/2 times 8 is going to give us a 4. The second thing we need to ask ourselves is, do we have like terms? In this case, we have like terms. -24x and -5x are like terms, so we need to bring them together. And for the case of 30x squared, we just need to drop it without the positive sign. Then -24x minus 5x is going to give us -29x, then plus a 4. And that is going to be the simplified form of the expansion of example 12. As a summary, I have listed the 4 fundamental concepts of multiplication and division of signs. And it is my urge that whenever you're carrying out the different mathematical operations, always remember to apply these concepts. That brings us to the end of our today's discussion. Thank you for watching and hoping to see you next time.